Welcome, 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 everyone. Okay, I'm going to jump in on this first question dealing with education today. And this is something that I've been doing a little research on for the past, for some years, over 10 years. And I've studied a couple of chronically low performing school districts. And one common theme is the chronically low performing urban districts all have a magnet school, right? And what are the pros and cons to having magnet schools in a district? And I want to hear what you all have to say first. Well, I want to hear what you all have to say, but I can share my views and opinions first to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going with this. But the districts I studied is a district. There is, of course, Charleston County School District, Richmond County Schools in Augusta, Georgia. There is a school district in Mississippi, one in Alabama, and it was another southern state. So I found out some other correlations as well. But I noticed when we had magnet schools, and this is my opinion, it's like you take the top performing students from a school, you put them into this isolated building with all, high performing kids. They have this added pressure because it's they receive all these accolades for being there. So now they're going to do what it takes to stay there. The parents are going to do what it takes. They're going to support them, get all the materials they need, make sure they do everything, all of the things that we want done at the low performing schools. They're going to do it there. But then what's left behind? And I noticed the districts that did not have magnet schools had a overall, high performance. For the most part, the numbers were better across the board throughout the districts. They had programs within a school, AP programs, some had IB programs, things like that. So I want to know how you all feel about it. What are the pros and cons to having magnet schools in a school district? And of course, before you speak, I want you to introduce yourself so the listeners would know like who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I can certainly start. Hello to everyone. My name is Richelle Anderson. I am an educator with about 20 plus years. I am a published author as well. I have taught in both the elementary and middle school. I've certainly been an administrator as well in elementary, middle, and high. And I am currently your sitting superintendent in transition. And I think what I would share about myself is that I love education. I truly believe that it changes the world and that what we deposit in our young people, we can withdraw later.
Now, I want to hear your take on these magnet schools. What do you think? What's the impact, pros and cons?
Well, I think let's start with the cons, and I think it's an opportunity, but not necessarily a con. I do believe in what you said, and I support that it certainly does. It separates the haves and the have-nots, so to speak. It does allow those individuals who are definitely more astute as educators to certainly transition with like students. The pro, though, to that, to be quite honest, is that the students who have the ability to certainly progress forward, that is, in my opinion, fair for them to have a focus in their education, because most of students, and it's really not so much about the parent always. There are some students who truly are great students who want to excel, and they certainly want to be in a position to do just that without some of the added distractions or some of the nuances that they experience in just the general ed programs. But at the same time, I also believe that it's how you set up and how you explain to young people the importance of education just in general. So if I am, able to embrace again, the option to attend magnet school, I've worked hard to do that. And so there is something, some type of criteria that you do have to meet that I'm able to meet as a student. And so I should not be certainly shunned upon because I've done what I should do as a student while in school. At the same time, I do believe, because I've been a teacher and I will be always a teacher at heart, I do believe that it does separate students, and you typically have your public schools and your general ed students sitting there that are like as well, and there are some of your lower performing students, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think that's a time for us to certainly pour into those students and give them the tools that they certainly need to excel.
Mm.
I see it both ways. I see it as a positive, and it can be a negative, but I believe it's all in presentation and how things are certainly set up and organized.
Questions, comments? Ms. Tisa, how do you feel about it?
So I'm Tisa Matthews. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm a retired teacher with 28 years experience teaching in the Title I rural community schools. Ended up back in the community in which I was a part of. Magnet schools in Charleston County lacks diversity. And so even though, as Koshan said in the beginning, it takes away the higher performing students, it doesn't help the homegrown schools because they're taking the top tier students. And so the community schools then struggle to meet the demands or the criteria or even recruit the teachers that they need to allow these children to excel in regards to state testing or just the general test that we give yearly to the students. My niece was a part of one of the magnet schools here, and she had a great opportunity to travel there. Transportation was an issue at first for many students who were a part of that program with her, but what we later found was because of the lack of diversity, it became a hell situation for her, whereas she didn't have anyone or any teachers to even relate to her as being a student of African descent. And so this was something that we found out later on that many children experience being in these magnet programs. So I just wonder why, it isn't like something that could be offered within their home school, their home community, and why these children have to venture out for a better academic, environment. And that's my take on it.
You made some good points. I remember when the magnet school first started, and this was the 85-86 school year. Everything, it was written, and they kind of somehow had gotten away from it. It was brought up a few times in Charleston, and they had ran several articles in the papers about it. So when the school opened initially, it was a requirement to be 50-50, have this equal representation. And in the 50, it was like 50 boys, 50% girls. So every class had 25 students. Every grade had 50 students, two grades per class. I mean, two classes per grade, 50 students per grade, 25 girls, 25 boys. And then if one class had 13 white students, they had 12 minorities. And the other class would have 13 minorities and 12 whites. So it was evident for me because I was really, really conscious kid. And my mom always talked to me about life events, and she talked to me about things like this, like you would talk to an adult. And part of it was because in her circle, she was limited on the adults that she could talk to about these things. So that was something that stood out. And of course, I hated it. I didn't want to be there because I was leaving all of my childhood friends. And Tisa, you can relate being from a small rural area. You meet your friends in preschool, and you're in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Like, we're growing together. A lot of us start from preschool off into college. So being separated from friends, of course, created anxiety and I just really didn't like it. The long bus ride, just being around people that I didn't like. There were no advantages. And I remember as a third grader being selected to attend this new magnet school, being told how great of an opportunity this was. And everybody was sold on it and manipulated by that. And I asked my mom, how is it a better school and it hasn't opened yet? And I was like, I'm being selected because of my test scores, but I earned these perfect scores at C.C. Blaney. So obviously C.C. Blaney is a great school and has a lot to offer. But of course, when you have a lot of high performance students together, you can do so much more. We had computer programming classes. We took French in elementary, in addition to our core classes. I don't remember doing PE, to be honest. I'm sure they may have had it there, but I just don't remember taking PE. I remember art and French and this computer programming class. And of course, our core classes, but I don't remember PE. So I often thought about it as a student. And of course, as an educator, I always wondered the impact. And another thing a question that I have for you all, and this is just some information that I was reviewing. Again, I looked at a lot of these low performing school districts. There's one district, Richmond County in Augusta, Georgia. They have 70 employees who earn over $100,000 per year. They have so many district level positions. I couldn't even begin to name all of the titles that they have, the MTSS director, MTSS coordinators. So you have all these people in the school to track data. You have facilitators and specialists on the elementary and secondary level for every content area. You have instructional coaches. You have, multiple assistant principals, like all of these people. And the district is among the lowest performing in the state of Georgia and in the bottom of the entire country. A couple of the schools, the students demonstrated like 2.5% demonstrated proficiency in mathematics. 2.5%. So out of 200 students, only 5 will be proficient. So obviously, like all these positions and money is not the answer. How do we think we can fix the problems that these districts face? And what's the impact of all of these people and positions? And I'm sure, Tisa, being in a large district like Charleston County, you've seen something similar. I don't know the topology as far as the district setup in Charleston. I haven't taken the time to review it, but I know a lot of districts have a lot of positions. You have this person, you have instructional coaches, academic, whatever, but no results. Go ahead, Tisa.
I agree wholeheartedly. Like there are several key positions and, they don't go back to reevaluate, hey, did the instructional coaches, do we really need that many? Do we need one in every school? It's crazy how it's set up. And like you said, the results aren't there. I think about C.C. Blaney and just how, they closed that one elementary school and then actually they housed it within E.B. Ellington as a magnet school within another school.
Oh, wow.
Mind you, they did the recruitment for the top tier students. But then when you look at those students who were supposed to be in this magnet program receiving the same curriculum as the other half of the building, or even the fact that there are children who are supposed to be in that program who aren't even above the 25th percentile on the iReady test, something doesn't make sense. But this is what's happening. And like you said, we have all these key individuals there to support not only the teachers, but also the students, but the school report card doesn't reflect that growth. So I think that we just have a lot that we need to go back and reevaluate. I do believe the district is doing a better job of weeding out positions, but we're not close to where we need to be with that. And it's sad.
What's
We
the
also need to look
prerequisite
at
for those to be considered that magnet program?
State test scores, SE Ready, I Ready. Initially, they look at their I Ready test results from spring to apply for the next year. But like I said, that program is not what it should be. And it hasn't been for a long time, but a lot of people don't pay attention to that because it's just rule and it's there. And that was one of the main reasons for them even closing CC Blaney, because they said that we could create a magnet program here and house it at EB Ellington. And it just be as separate. Even the teachers are still registered as CC Blaney, but it's a part of their magnet program.
Oh,
A
wow.
lot of people
I wasn't aware of that.
no, they're not aware of that. But actually, all honesty, if you were to look at the students who are enrolled in that program and just look at their iReady test scores, not even their SC Ready scores, I mean, those kids aren't making the mark, all of them, but they're still a part of that program because guess what? They need the numbers.
You need a number, so then they lower the requirement to enter the program.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about already? I'm just asking. I have limited experience with it. The district I worked in back in 2015 introduced iReady. And of course, every program says how they're going to change everything and be the greatest this and the best that. And it was an adaptive diagnostic program. But in my opinion, from what I've learned about reading and literacy, a great foundation in phonics and increasing a child's phonological awareness is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Having a teacher who can speak clearly is very important because when you think about reading and comprehension is the foundation. So in order to read and comprehend what you've read, word recognition and word meaning are both very important. And when I started taking some classes, I learned about the importance of enunciation and being able to pronounce certain words, right? And one is like the double T sound. How do you pronounce the double T words with double T, like Wetter, Better? How do you pronounce those words?
This is for me or for Doctor?
Hey, both of you.
Oh, okay.
And Dr. Anderson.
Right. So I would definitely, I think you just said wetter. I mean, I would definitely try. I mean, it does depend on enunciation, Coach Sean or Dr. Mitchell, I should say. But
What I've learned, and I knew you would. You both speak very clearly, and of course, you are beyond that phase in your careers. But do you see the importance of having someone who speaks the way you all do, teaching early childhood, and
yeah,
how? Go ahead.
well, I see the importance. I want to go back to a couple of points that you made as you were talking, and I'm certainly jotting down, trying to capture your feedback. Let's talk about teachers, the professional educators. Of course, as a nation, as a community, as a district, as schools, we have all suffered through the transition of teachers who've retired, who were those great teachers, et cetera. And then just the nuance at this point of trying to certainly recruit the best. But because of the shortage, and not just in the teaching profession, but across the board, we've all experienced a change in how we've had to view how we look at and how we get the outcome that we're looking for. And sometimes that may not have yielded the outcome that we certainly desire. However, we have so many teachers who have taken the alternative route to education as well that didn't take your average, teacher program through school. And so therefore there are some things that they may not know, as they are certainly serving as those professional educators in classrooms. So the learning curve for those individuals are much different than an individual who's truly came through a traditional program where that was your focus. The other point that I certainly want to make, that you talked about iReady as a program, I certainly, I'm not a big fan of programs. I choose people over programs. I truly believe that a quality teacher in front of every child every day makes a difference. And we can throw money at it. We can say what we believe it is, but it goes back to something that I said earlier. How you organize anything and the processes and procedures that you have in place truly do establish the foundation. And so as we talk about magnet programs, while there are pros and cons to anything, in my opinion, and it is certainly my opinion, that we do have to ensure that we follow the intent as to what something was certainly established for. And if the overall intention is certainly not there and it's not yielding the results, we do need to go back and we need to revisit, and we need to, again, look to see what we need to do to change that. But at the end of the day, we do have to look at innovative aspects of how we reach all children, because not every child is going to learn in the environment that I certainly came through as an elementary student, middle school student, high school student, even a college grad at that point. So I think when we look at the whole child and we look at what is education and what it should look like and how it should sound and what it should feel like, there are so many things now that we have on the table that, yes, having a firm foundation, I do agree that that is definitely important.
Hmm.
However, we also have to make certain that, you know, not only are we talking about enunciating, we're talking about so many other factors that our educators are facing that we do have to address, safety being one of those, and an individual social, emotional aspect of what they're experiencing as well. There are children would who clearly can thrive whether or not a teacher is sitting in front of them or not, because they come to school from home ready. And so when we talk about, and when I in the experience with magnet education, I can talk about it from a negative standpoint, a positive standpoint. I've seen it both ways, but when it's built correctly
Hmm.
and the tools are in place for the child, and you truly recruit and organize and structure it as it should be, I believe that your results are certainly positive. And I
At the
believe that
magnet
same can
school,
be true
at the
as a
magnet
magnet,
school itself, all throughout the district. What
as
impact
a
do you think would
magnet
have
school
on the
itself.
other schools in the district?
Well, I do believe that it does hurt the other schools when the other schools are not certainly organized in a position where they can offer some of the same opportunities for the young people who may still be in that location. And so I think we have to think outside of the box and to ensure that we again are reaching every child, and that every child has the same opportunity. And so my test scores really should not separate me, but we do know that test scores are weighed heavily in decision making.
Right.
Right. Hmm.
Which, I mean, that's understood. And I mean, we do have to, excuse me,
Hmm.
tracking. I don't think tracking is a bad thing, because we don't want to waste someone's time, and everyone doesn't want to be a rocket scientist. So I don't object to tracking. I don't have a problem with it. But like you said, everyone should receive, an opportunity. There's a letter. It's called A Letter to William and Mary, written by Thomas Jefferson. And he wrote this, and it's amazing the way he thought centuries ago, and is still in place now with the American education system. And he felt like everyone should be educated, including slaves, and everyone should have up to an eighth grade education. Now, back then, an eighth grade education was equivalent to like maybe ninth to 10th grade now. Reading was important, writing. And if you look at the penmanship that educators and others had back then, it was amazing. There's a formula. There are two. I know one is called the Fleisch-Kincaid reading level, and there's another formula. I cannot remember the name of it, but it takes a document, some written text, and it analyzes it. And there are different categories: the number of letters per word, number of words per sentences, the number of sentences in a paragraph. They have passive sentences, and it grades it. So what I would like for you all to do once, when you're in your free time, take an article. You can copy an article, something that you all may have written. I'm sure you all have written something, and go to Microsoft Word, and in the options tab, it will have an option that says show readability statistics. You have to turn it on. It's not turned on by default, but go to the options tab of Microsoft Word and select show readability statistics. And when you review your work, like the spell check, do spelling and grammar just to see the grade level of your work. And one of the highest works out there is the Emancipation Proclamation. And it's amazing how educated Abraham Lincoln was in the 1800s. But even going back even further to the 1700s, when Thomas Jefferson talked about what people needed and being able to read, write, communicate, and know math up to algebra. And then he felt like everyone should be divided. You have your learned, like we call our AP, college prep, whatever. You're unlearned, which people kind of push into vocation. And then the wealthy, they could do what they want to do, regardless of what type of student they were. They're going to go to, top-notch universities, whatever their parents could afford. They're going to start businesses or inherit businesses, and life was just different. But tracking in the 1700s sounds just like the tracking of today, because these kids are pushed into internships and school to work opportunities, which is, I mean, it's a good thing. And your region plays a major role as well. Tisa, we come back to you in Charleston. You have a lot of industry. You're in an industrial complex, and students in Charleston with a high school diploma or without, but in most cases, a high school diploma, can earn a good living. You have workers at plants and factories that earn as much as or more than a high school principal.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was talking about earlier, Dr. Anderson, is the importance of, and when I said the words, you pronounced it properly. But I've observed a lot of classrooms and teachers, they turn the double T sound into a D, right? They'll say that's better or wetter. Now, imagine how challenging that is to a young child who's learning to spell and trying to increase their phonological awareness. And if they heard the word better, how do they think it should be spelled? That is why I was saying the importance of having someone in that early childhood, how important it is, their oral communication skills, as far as helping a child get that foundation. Because once they have the foundation and they can spell, they can recognize words, then you increase their vocabulary through word meaning. Once you have word recognition and word meaning, now reading and comprehension gets easier. And of course, after the sixth grade, they transition from reading comprehension to more literature and language arts and understanding how to, in early grades, you tell kids to have an opening, a body, and a closing. And that's, paper in elementary. But when they transition, now we can use different parts of a sentence and develop a framework for the writings and things like that to get them to that level. Go ahead, Tisa. I know you have something to say.
I was just thinking and going back to childhood. with the teachers at CC Blaney or the teachers at Schroeder, we're from that region where Gullah Geechee is a thing. And so even the Gullah language, I mean, we knew how to
Turn it off and on.
code switch, And so that did not take away from our understanding of the proper or correct English language. So I'm not sure that would have a significant effect on the children that we're charged with. You understand? I mean, we go through teaching reading, we go through teaching the writing process. And so I don't know about that one, Koshan.
No, this is what was research. I had to do a letters course, learning essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. And that was what the research stated. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I can understand it. It makes sense. So this was something that Mr. Pinckney pointed out to me back in school 30 plus years ago when we did the PSAT. And one of our students, he scored really high on the verbal part of the test. And everybody was shocked because, he wasn't in advanced classes, just, guy. And he was like, he asked him, where did he come down from? And he came from New Jersey. And it was something that Mr. Pinckney pointed out. And he was like, how in the schools in the Northeast, their reading scores and reading proficiency levels always much higher. And I think that we can contribute it to the broken language that's spoken in schools and by some educators, not all, because like I said, you and others do speak and do have command of the English language, but in some areas they don't. And I think that has a direct impact on the performance, the literacy performance of our students, because it has to be modeled to them. But if you don't hear it in school and you're not hearing how to speak correctly at home, then when you are tested and the way the tests are given, it will sound incorrect. Something else will sound like it's incorrect. Hey, Deborah.
Hey, I had removed the app and downloaded it back to see if it would still make me do the call-in thing, but it's still making me do it.
Or would you like to contribute to us?
I was just listening a little bit, and I definitely wanted to just kind of speak on what you guys were just saying about, hearing correct pronunciation and things like that. Like, for me, that was a tad bit challenging coming from a home where, there was, my mom's from the South, my dad's from the islands. So there was like different languages that I was being introduced to, but I was mainly like up north for the most part. And like being in school up north, I'll go back to my childhood. Like when I moved from up north to Georgia, when I moved from New York to Georgia as a kid, I think it was like middle school. It was almost like I was being demoted, like knowledge wise, because the classes that they put me in, I was way further ahead in knowledge than where they were. You get what I'm saying? So like their seventh grade classes were like up north ninth grade classes almost. You get what I'm saying? So like that was a big.
So are you saying that the classes up north were further ahead, or when you came to Georgia, the Georgia classes were further ahead than the ones up north?
No, the ones up north were further ahead than what was happening in Georgia.
Oh, okay. Because you said that, like the seventh grade, ninth grade there. Okay.
Yeah, like so being in Georgia, coming to Georgia, coming to Georgia from New York.
Different coming from, imagine being in Massachusetts and they were ranked number one in the country throughout the 80s and 90s and always in the top five. And then South Carolina has always been in the bottom five in the 50 states. And when I came back to South Carolina, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that I was sitting in a middle school class with kids that could not read. They were literally
Mm-hmm.
the bra. I was like, oh no, this not going to work. So it took a few days because, the, I forgot what the method is called when you randomly call on kids like popcorn or whatever it is. Back then, it's like you sat in alphabetical order and teachers had them reading down the line or whatever.
Yeah, like in a circle or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time my teacher heard me read, the whole class was in awe. So I had completed that book the previous year in Boston. So my teacher, when she heard me read the first time, she told me to stay after when the kids went to PE, and she took me to guidance, and they immediately put me into a seventh grade ELA class. And then I went to math, and the math teachers knew my dad, who had been a math teacher as well. So they took me from a sixth grade math class and put me in an eighth grade math class. But it was like, the kids we were so much further ahead in Massachusetts than in South Carolina. And outside of math, I honestly felt like all 4 years of high school, I didn't learn anything beyond what I had already learned in Massachusetts in middle school. Now math was universal. I did learn a lot of math in my school in South Carolina. I took algebra, geometry, trig, AP calculus, and I was successful with the AP exam. I had great math teachers, but outside of that, like everything else, it wasn't challenging. Something else that stood out to me, and this was something that I researched: majors and universities, colleges and universities. So it's like in the South, if you get into a major Division I institution, right? If your child gets accepted into an SEC, ACC school, they're at Duke, Georgia Tech, Auburn, Vanderbilt, and your child says, I'm majoring in elementary education, we treat it like, what? That's a waste. Like you're wasting an opportunity to be at one of these schools. And if you go to a Division I college, that you should be an engineer, a doctor, a scientist, whatever. But up north was different. My elementary teachers and middle school teachers, they went to Boston College, they went to MIT, they went to UMass, they went to Harvard. And it seemed like in the South, the profession is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we look down on education and being an educator. Like right now, with the layoffs and everything that's going on in the economy, people are like, well, just go teach. Like it's just that simple. And back to what Dr. Anderson talked about, that is a challenge that administrators are facing because we now have a lot of career changers. They don't have the pedagogy that it takes to teach. So I guess that's another challenge as a building level administrator and also district level. How do you get that to them, Dr. Anderson? Do you find money from your board and send them out to PDs, hoping that it's something that's going to be effective? Do you utilize all of these people in your district and provide in-house PD sessions to get them where they need to be? Like, how do we combat those challenges?
Coach, and I'll answer that. I would like to hear, I think it was Deborah that was speaking prior to you in regards to the differences between her transitioning from
New
the
York.
north from New York to
Atlanta
Georgia,
or Georgia.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And then the differences within her home. So I would like to hear her, why she felt that, number one. But to answer your question, I do believe that you certainly do have to budget accordingly. But that has to be something district wide. I don't believe that you can just, push that down to the school level. That should happen from your human resource department, number one. But I also believe that your board, along with your superintendent, should have some dialogue as to what your district goals will be so that you are able to certainly support the needs at your school level, because of certainly your district is only as strong as your schools. And so your schools are only as strong as your district level as well. And so I do believe that recruitment is a very big part, but you can only throw money at initiatives, but so much, because that's also a barrier in some regard and in some areas. Going back to what you said with industry, some districts is lacking and they don't have that option. So what do you do, and how can you certainly be innovative enough to certainly recruit and retain, number one? But with a shortage that's out there, and with education not being as thought, I guess one of those, the word that I like to use is thought of as a
heralded profession.
correct. Okay, that would be a great way to put it. Then that's a challenge in itself, in changing that mindset as well. So I think there are several barriers that districts, schools, leaders will face, particularly in this climate and era that we're living in. But it's something that's doable. Word of mouth has been my experience. Those districts that are doing it well, it's internally being shared from those individuals who are there to do the recruitment and the promoting of their district, and why the district is the best place to be, and a place that we want to certainly be a part of. And so there is no rockets. There is no answer. If you're asking me for a magic wand that you can wave and, hey, there's a magic word. If that were the case, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we certainly are today.
Mm.
Yeah. And just going back to answer your question, or to elaborate a little bit more, like, it's it was a lot, like when I don't, it just kind of felt like when I came to Georgia, what they were learning, the level at which they were learning up north, we were already ahead of that.
Right.
School wise, like we were already ahead of that. And so, I mean, I didn't look at it as a negative thing then, except for the fact that I felt like I was relearning things that I had already learned. Like, I'm sitting in classes where I've already, and they wouldn't change my classes more or less due to my birthday, like when my birthday fell, which was so weird. And like eventually, like when I got to high school, it got better. I was able to like be in more classes that were on my level. I wound up graduating with almost a 4.0 in 11th. Like, I was done with school in 11th grade for the most part.
Yeah.
By 11th grade, I was already leaving school at like 12 o'clock. I only had to be there until 12 o'clock. And then I was able to go on about my day and go to work or, go to college, my college classes, and do those things. So I think in a way it set me up for a better ending to my education. But in the moment of it, like going from New York to Georgia, it was a setback. It was a setback because I just felt like I was just like there to be there, because I wasn't really learning anything that I didn't already know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and then there, but like up north wise, there were some challenges there because I started off my childhood, only around like my mom's side of the family. And then when we started getting, sent to Barbados and things like that, you have a whole different like dialect and pronunciation of words, though it like they would speak to us, like in English. Like, some of my family would speak French. I have no clue how to speak French, but some of them would speak French. But then most of them, when they would talk to us, they would speak English, but it was with such a heavy accent. Like, so I had to really attune myself to be able to understand that side of my family now. And so it did for me in my earlier years present a challenge, because I was like back and forth between Barbados and, New York. And so it's like I'm spending some of my time with one dialect, and then the other half of my time with another, with a different dialect. And as it's hard to explain, like, it can be a good thing, but then it can also have its negative effects,
Like you had to be
especially,
bilingual.
with being so young. Yeah. Like I could understand, it was almost like I had to figure out how to understand that other side of my family.
Mm.
You know, like it was a challenge in doing that. But once I was able to do that, it also posed a challenge because I would come back and there would be a lot of that dialect and that I picked up over there. And then I would come back and I would speak some of it. You know what I'm saying? So as I'm speaking it, no one understood or knew what I was talking about, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but I think you
I
guys can
appreciate
get
you
the gist of
sharing. I
what I
do.
mean. Yeah, like it was just, I don't know. Like even now to this day, like when some of my family members who are from Barbados, when they talk to me, I still don't understand all of it. You know what I'm saying? But I can understand most of it. I can speak some of it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes people will tell me they hear an island accent coming from me, and I don't ever hear that. So I don't, it's weird a lot of times how you pick up on things and you don't realize that you're picking up on them and that you're doing them. And as a kid, I was doing that. Like I was picking up on the language, I was picking up on the accent, and then I would get back to New York and now I'm talking in this accent, and you know what I'm saying? And so it was challenging.
But that's natural. That's a natural occurrence to happen.
Yeah.
Even like regional thing. I had family members from up north who traveled every winter here to the south, and going back up north, it's just like the dialect that they picked up here. They were able to, when they encounter other southern people, they were able to relate to what they were saying. Something as simple as the word mash. Okay. It was a funny incident when my cousin was in the elevator and someone came on, Southerner, and they asked them to, well, they said mash two. Okay. And no one, for the longest, no one moved. And finally said mash two. And she said, you know, just press two. So it's just, that happens. We do that. We code switch. And with you being the Barbados dialect mixed with the northern, and now you even have some southern in you, that
Mhm.
happened, Deborah. So I completely understand.
And then one of the biggest things, oh my gosh, y'all, it was really hard for me to make friends. I will say that because like hearing the people when I got here in Atlanta say screet and scrimp and like I would be like, what in the hell are y'all talking about? That is not how you say this word. That is like, so I spent like until I realized this is just how they talk, I spent so much time correcting people that no one liked me. They were like, "Oh, you think you smarter than somebody because and it wasn't that. It was just I'm coming from where they speak a lot more proper and articulated. So what is this? Like, what is happening here?
And kids are graded on it. Like when you take have any of you ever had an IQ test done?
I don't know. I don't think so.
There's a portion on the IQ test where you word recognition and pronunciation.
Mm.
And not a situation I'm proud of, but it happened. In middle school, I not middle, elementary school, called a teacher. So before I could go back to school, I had to have an IQ test done, making sure I wasn't crazy. And I remember one of the words after was when they spoke to my mom. One of the things at the time, I used to say ax instead of ask because
Mm.
that's what I heard everyone say, to ask something. But of course, there are so many other components that one thing would not have that type of impact. But I don't even know what the scale is or what's considered what. But that was in the fourth grade. I think my IQ was like 126 at the time. And that bothered me. I had a complex. So I'd always say ask and make sure I pronounced ASK instead of ax, like people around me used to say. And I always think about the impact, how you say things, how you explain things. And kids are very naive when they're learning. So as educators, we play a major role in what they do and how they learn things. And Deborah, my educators, Deborah joined us later. Tisa and Dr. Anderson are both veteran educators. They're both 25 actually, but they've been in education for long enough to retire. But
Did you say they both 25?
yeah, they're both 20. Hey,
Don't believe that.
We are young at heart, so I take it. It's okay.
you choose your battles. Dr. Anderson, she said she's 25. I'm going with 25. So
Right. We gonna let it rock. We gonna let it rock out.
and Deborah
Now
is
let me ask you
actually a
this.
vendor.
Yes, I am. I work in education.
Deborah works in
I actually
education as
work in
well.
education. I work for McGraw-Hill.
Okay. So then do you feel like it's biased then when we go to look at these state assessments and we talk about the reading portion? Math is truly universal, but when we begin to talk about the reading portion or the writing pieces that we present to our children, do you feel then that they're biased to certain demographics of kids?
I mean, of course, of course. I've had so many different situations where like parents have called in and, they've expressed how they are not happy with, the curriculum that's being taught to their child. Like, there's nothing about, some of them have a problem with the fact that there's nothing about, Black history in any of the programs, mainly. Like when I look at, I mean, there are in some, but in a lot of them, because, they're removing it, you don't see it in a lot of them. So I've had parents call in and, voice their frustrations about, my child is, African American, but there's, everything they're reading about it's nothing, about their culture. It's nothing like how back in the day we actually learned about slavery and we learned about, whether it was truth or not, we were at least still taught it. And like none of that gets addressed nowadays in education. And so it leaves it up to the parents to do it. And because parents don't feel like that's, or what I've gathered is a lot of parents don't feel like it's their job to teach, but it's always our jobs to teach. Like we can't expect to really send our children out into this world to allow other people to teach them. It has to start at home. And I think if more parents understood that, then we'd be able to forge a better educational system between like parents and the schools. But then I've had parents call in and, a book says something about a little Black boy and, they're livid because why does the boy have to be Black? Why can't the little boy? Y'all, the things I hear and the things I get are like so crazy, like so extremely crazy. And I just, I feel for our educational system. I do. And working in it, I would honestly say, and maybe this is a bit off topic, right? Because for me now, being an IT specialist and working on the back end more so now I work with like administrators and IT directors at school systems more than whereas I used to work with teachers and students and parents more. Now I'm more on the administrative side of it. And it sickens me that I have to interact with people who are running these schools and you can't do something as simple as read an email correctly and reply back correctly. Or you can't take direction, but you are trying to direct a whole district of children and teachers for that matter.
Mm. This is a segue to something else I wanted to ask. That I hinted at earlier. When we think about the decision making, so we talked about how districts are so top heavy, and you have all these people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Anderson is a superintendent. So my question, Doc, is this: when you're selecting textbooks and applications and things like that, who do you allow to make those selections, or do you do it yourself? Do you have a content area specialist? What are some things you're looking for? Do you kind of wait to see what happened with another district? You know, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to be a guinea pig. Let's see if it works somewhere else. And, you know, what the results were in other areas before we jump on it. What was your approach when it came to materials? So,
Well, it depended on what was being adopted that year. If the state was paying for it, then you selected your choices from
from what,
from what the
what the
state
state,
was paying for, because you weren't just getting ready to give up district funds just to purchase material that
and
you
see,
could have got you could
that's
get free.
And
that's
there
a
are
bittersweet thing.
curriculum coordinators that actually handle that I deal
Absolutely.
with specifically that handle the adoption of a lot of our programs.
Yeah.
And
For
see,
the
in
most
larger
part,
districts, they have that autonomy in a large district. Doc, what's your student enrollment in your district, Doc?
We're roughly 2,700 students,
See, so
but
that's
but
like
it's the
two high
same,
schools.
right?
that's
But
on
it's
the
the
low
same.
end. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the same option. I mean, it's no different the larger you are or the smaller you are. If the state is paying for it, trust
No, we're
me,
talking about as far as your district
selection.
level employees. No, like she's saying, like in a larger district, they would allow the math coordinator to select the math materials.
So in even in the smaller districts, you do some of the same. I mean, keep in mind
Mm-hmm.
that these individuals are working across the board with the same individuals. So they go to a
Mm-hmm.
round table at the state and they receive the same information, and they are communicating across districts with each other. So the curriculum department, particularly in my district, that's what we do. We allow those individuals who are in those content areas, again, depending on what's being adopted that year, to have those conversations. But you also do ask for, we do involve our teachers, grade level leaders at the school level as well. And
Great.
when the textbook caravan comes through, we also, because it's a requirement in South Carolina, that you have documentation where your parents have the option to at least stop by the school to view the
To
material.
view the materials,
And
right.
right. And so we do try to get feedback that way. Whether we are using it to our advantage, that's one thing, but we can shake the box
Right.
off.
I
I
have
say we do.
districts, y'all. I see districts that have paid so much money. Like I know for a fact these products are not cheap all the time, especially in the
No.
numbers in which they get ordered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have literally seen districts who purchase these products and then call a year later when the product expires and goes, well, can we get access back to this because
Mhm.
we never used the program. Why?
You spent
Like, why did you
$70,000.
not?
Right. You spent
Right. Why would you? And McGraw Hill's not going to give you another year for free because you
free.
chose not
Right.
to
Right.
use it. Right. But then there's another issue, even aside from that, where I mean, not an issue, but like what I do like about McGraw Hill is that they give a lot of leeway to not only parents but teachers to be able to request like demos and
Yeah.
pilots, which are not things that they have to pay for. That allows them access to the programs to try them out, to see how they work, to see how the kids interact with them. And then from there, then they come back and make their, overall purchase, their big purchase or whatever have you. So that's what I do like about McGraw Hill because they do give you the opportunity to like sample these products before having to really pay all this money to,
And
have
it's
the kids
ironic
interact.
because that's how I met Deborah. I was at a charter school, and at the charter school, we do not have a school district. So every
Mm-hmm.
decision is made in house. So
It's
not only
cool, yeah.
did I have to meet with US Foods and Cisco to order food, I had to change the engines on the bus, oil changes, everything. I also ordered the materials. And like you said, if anything is adopted by the state, you just put your order in. I had a direct contact at the state, and I would let her know, hey, we need this number of copies. And what they were doing, they would allow like a couple extra copies because I had to
Mm-hmm.
send in my power school roster to show that, okay, I have 46 graders, so I'm going to order 44 books, in case we get a few that transfers in.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, being able to pilot was always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add what I've done because I think we got the health book from you, Deborah. And the health book has these modules that we use for SEL. Something else that you mentioned, Dr. Anderson, the social emotional learning. That is very, very,
Uh-huh.
very important.
Because they have different tiers of the health book. Like there's regular health, then there's health with human sexuality,
Yeah, we
health
try to
with,
stay away
so
from that
it's
one.
different levels. Yeah, but technically we do offer, you get what I'm saying? All of those different levels of the health book. So it's not just like regular health. They have sexual health. They have, I mean, I think we could go to teach those things in school again. I learned it like I having sex education when I was in school was
Yeah.
it was amazing. It taught us a lot, and it made us actually think about and be more conscious of some of the things that we were doing. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays you don't have that. And if it's not being taught at home and it's not being taught in school, we it's being taught on the internet. And that can't help none of us with our kids.
Well, what we're
So,
doing right now is we have a what's called week zero. Before the students are allowed to enter their classes, they spend, and I'm at an alternative program. So before they go to a class, they spend 3 days of going over policies, procedures, note taking, learning strategies, everything that's the things that are going to be needed for them to be successful when they do enter the classroom setting. And I chose the modules. I think one is alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, conflict resolutions, and there's another module that we do. But we also have social emotional learning program as a part of our day where they actually do social emotional learning every single day for 30 minutes each day. That is very important. And learning styles is important as well. Finding out how a student learned and helping them understand how they learn best. Just the way you record and store information. If you think about getting a list of items right now, is the information, how do you retain better? Vertical? Do you write it horizontal? Do you make a diagram? Do you need a thinking map? Things like that. And I realize how important it is for your teachers to create the climate in their classroom that invites that, where a student can speak up and ask to have something explained in a different way and not be ridiculed or teased because they don't learn like others learn. And once you get those climates together, it changes the entire culture in your school. But I asked
mhm.
Doc, from the superintendent level, because that was something some years ago, like 2016, I was an assistant superintendent. And that was something that bothered me because my research dealt with like culturally responsive learning, you know, like teaching the individual, right? And differentiation. So then when I ask about materials and what did they base it on, they ordered materials and everybody said, oh, we were just doing what they do within the cohort. And I was like, what do you mean in the cohort? So I'm working in McCormick and they're like, well, we just do what the other districts do. And Greenwood and Abbeville and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, you're just ordering whatever they order. What makes you think it's going to be effective or something that your kids need? So it's like you're doing a follow fashion
Hmm.
when it comes to order materials and then everybody just pushing it in and the people that are making the decisions, what is their background? You know, when you look at some of the district level and a lot of districts, getting a district level position is like an award. You have someone at the district level because they've been here for this number of years, they've done that, and they're rewarded with this. But are they in a position that will maximize their abilities and that will do what's best for the children? Because some of the people
That's
that are
not even
ordering
the case
things,
for all districts though, because there's a lot of these district level people that I get that they're like, I was just a teacher and, and our district admin left, so now this is my role. I was thrust into this role and I have no clue like
what
what
to
I'm
do.
doing.
Right.
Yeah, like I've literally spent 3 hours on a Zoom call teaching an administrator how to do their job. Like
Mm.
literally every aspect of it. I've spent that time on a Zoom so that I could literally like show them the screen and walk them through the process, especially because I deal more with the auto roster districts, that use the power school and the SSOs and all of that. So there's files involved in that and things like that. I've literally spent that time teaching them how to do their job. Did I have to? Is that in my job description? No. But because I feel so strongly about the fact that you are leading this district or a head person in this district, and there's no reason why you should be in this role if you have no clue what you're doing. I'm going to take that time and I'm going to make sure you know what you should be doing, how you need to do it. Now, all the intricates, you figure that out, but the processes, I'm going to make sure you know and understand these processes before you get off the phone with me.
But they're the decision maker.
And they are decision makers all around the board.
Okay. And again, like Doc says, they face challenges of filling these positions and getting people in. So I guess sometimes it's hard to find district level personnel as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of a challenge that is. Dr. Anderson would have to
It's a,
speak
cha-
on that.
it's a big challenge. It's a really big challenge because there's some districts that don't even have people in that place. They're like, our district head just walked off the job. Or like I've literally had gotten that call one day, like our district head just walked off the job and we don't know what to do.
Yeah, I saw where
And
a
I'm like,
district had a chief academic officer or something resign mid-year. And if you walk away from a six-figure salary mid-year, that raises a lot of eyebrows.
right. Like why?
Why?
What,
Yeah.
what what's happening within your organization that I mean, and sometimes it's personal, right? I've seen people walk away from more than that to go do something passionate that was just passionate for them and that just really fed their soul. So I understand that to an extent. But then there's that other side of that aspect, like what is happening within your organization while you are walking away in this manner and from this opportunity.
Well, now we need solutions. This is the part where I want to solicit you all and our listeners. You can type something in. What are some solutions?
I definitely think that where we offer all this money to ridiculous other types of careers, that money needs to go into education. A lot of that money needs to go into, making, being able to have a teacher be able to afford any level of a lifestyle. You get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's why we fail a lot with not having enough teachers or not having adequate, because in education you get paid little to nothing. And so it's like I may be passionate about this, but what's going to pay my bills?
And I agree. And I know that immediate, and when it happens, one thing that I know is inevitably going to get an influx of career changers that are chasing money. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to change the fabric of what education and educators were in the past. Education used to be a collaborative environment.
But I think with giving that money needs to also come a certain level of certification that has to be, like, steps that have to be taken to get, like, it shouldn't just be you get, you can just walk into this position off the street and you have no clue how to be a teacher. You've never had this experience. Like, I think those things also need to be taken into account.
Yep.
Like, don't just offer the money and then let the people come and flood the position. No, offer the money, but make sure like the certification is there. Make sure the know-how and the knowledge is there too.
The thing about incentivizing it is, I think that's what President Obama tried. The thing about having incentives is people want to manipulate those incentives. Because if you say, okay, you get paid for performance, you get high, your kids do well, you get high test scores. Now people are going to make sure their kids have high test scores. It's like Do you think B is the answer? They're going to find little creative ways, not that blatant, but you run the risk of people, when you start paying for performance, the performance gets manipulated. But I do
Yeah.
agree that you have to have some type of incentive. It's just that if you start paying, our teacher pay starts at 80,000 a year with, step increases, and they 3% cost of living increase. They get an extra 2,400 that goes up. So after 20 years, they're making about 130 grand, right? Now you're going to have career
Right.
changers that are going to come in just trying to manipulate a way to become higher up on the food chain. Well, what do I need to do to go from a teacher to an assistant principal, from an assistant to a principal, to the district, to whatever it takes to make more money? And
And I don't
Starting
think it
teacher.
should be incentivized on the test per se, like the testing of the students. Like how well, like if we take this student out of your class, are they still going to do this good? You get what I'm saying? Are they still going to perform in this manner if they're not under you? Like that, it doesn't need to just be, oh, you get a high test score or these kids get a high test score in your class, so you get a bonus, you get a pay raise. No. Can we take them out of this class and put them with another teacher, and can they still perform in that manner?
mm,
Can we change the instructor and see if what you did really helped these kids in some way, shape, form, or fashion? Like I think there can be so many more things that get put in place because we are talking about the education of our nation. You know what I'm saying? So there are so many more things, policies and things that can be put in place. I don't know. That's maybe that's just me thinking like practically about it, but realistically,
Mhm.
I know a lot of this is not going to happen. But Tisa, go ahead. I see you were off of mute and you were trying to say something. I apologize.
No, darling, you're good. I was just thinking how just this year, Charleston County has now increased the first year teacher salary like 56,000. A couple of weeks ago, they got approval to add another 4,000 to that. So we're now recruiting teachers, but they're coming from alternative programs, and so they don't have that same background as a traditional teacher, which in some areas, especially where a lot of those alternative teachers are going in the rural areas, is affecting the students' performances. And they're being thrown in without the true support that is needed to guide them through
Uh-huh.
the instruction for the entire year. They're just throwing them in here. They don't have any mentors with them, someone to guide them through within that classroom. They're just saying, here's the curriculum that they may have adopted for that's been in place maybe for 2 years. And then, okay, next year we're going to get a whole new reading curriculum. And so it's just a lot of factors. We go back to the original question about the magnet schools. Why don't we look at improving the homeschools within the communities? Why don't
mm-hmm,
we look at offering programs to keep our higher performing students in there
right.
instead of busing them out to another area that makes that school shine, and they're making the advanced grades on the school report card versus a school who now, what, you've taken all of the high performing students from here, we're now unsatisfactory. Oh
Right.
yeah, but we're using the same curriculum that the magnet school is using. It just doesn't make any sense. So we have a lot of restructuring I do believe that we have to do, even with recruitment. People are
Yeah.
flooding themselves to Charleston now because it's the highest paid district in the state of South Carolina. But at the same time, a
They
lot of
still
them
can't
are,
afford to live there.
yeah.
And the sad part is, I'm actually sending Carter right now. Carter's homeschooling because this was our first year here in Jacksonville. And I just didn't really know where to go with him. But like for his high school year, he's actually going to a magnet school. And that is more due to the fact that I can't find a regular school, public school that suffices in its level of education. It's sad. It's really sad for the area that I'm in. But if I really want Carter to succeed, the magnet school is the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say something right quick. I see that your mic is on, Doc. I just want to say one thing right quick. When Deborah talked about the performance, that's what happens when you have, it creates a problem when you have magnet schools within a district, because is it fair to incentivize performance when Tisa's teaching a class? She may have, in her workload throughout the day, she may see, just say in a middle school setting, she might have 6 classes with 20 students each. So you taught 120 kids and 40 of them have a 504 at IEP versus the magnet school teachers who have all gifted students. How do we compare TISA's test scores to the other teachers' test scores when we talk about, grading performance or incentivizing, the performance of the teacher? Go ahead, Doc.
Well, let me answer that question. In my opinion, I don't believe that we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges in that regard. So I don't know that there is a comparison other than to face the fact that we have children that are on different levels and they require a different mode of teaching and delivery in what they're getting because of where they're coming and where they are. But going back to Deborah's comment in regards, as a parent, in regard to the magnet school, and she doesn't believe that there is an adequate program in the traditional setting for her child. And so I want to take it from the standpoint, because I think she made a valid point there as a parent, but I want to take it from a standpoint as a district level leader. When you have the pressure of the state department and you have the pressure of your school board that they are charging you with moving your district forward, and or you are competing. I mean, you just heard Texas say that Charleston County at this point is the highest paying base salary at this point for teachers. So now the district is being flooded. And so now you have districts who cannot afford, at one point it was Beaufort County. And so you have individuals who yes, are going to chase the money. However, you also have the added pressure from the state as well because of the criteria in which you have to reach as a district in order for there not to be issues with takeover of your schools and or of your district, replacement of you as a leader, etc. The other part of that too is if districts are not going to offer choice, when you have a state that is pushing choice and charter education and providing funding for private education through vouchers, et cetera, and still legislatively are trying to figure out how they make it happen, even when, the law is not on their side. So districts are faced with the same challenge as a leader, that you are trying to figure out how you still exist as a district and not lose your children, number one. And what happens when you don't offer the choice for a parent to choose a magnet program for their child? Either they're going to stay with you and allow you to educate them within the district, and you can keep that child and count that child in your student count, okay? Or you're going to lose that child and family to another program elsewhere. So I don't think it's as simple as saying that is it fair. I think that the fairness walked out the door a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
When charter schools came on board, period, when choice became such a big a buzzword, and we are listening now more to, parents have a little more say, and they're much more, I want to
Active and
say,
aware. Mm-hmm.
yes, absolutely, of their choices and what they can and cannot have for their children. Again, we didn't have that issue previously because the parents that wanted to pull their children out of public education paid for their education. Okay.
Right.
when you now have a public entity that is going to give you an option to at least have part of your education paid for and or all of it paid for through charter education, which is a free public option, then here again, choice becomes a factor. And so you have to figure out how you exist in that environment as a district level leader as well, because there are pressures that districts are facing, leaders are facing, when they are still competing with the Charleston County. Everyone can't say that they can sit, if you can just, you have an approved amount for a base salary for teachers, and then they just got another approval for $4,000 more.
Right.
Well, not many districts can compete with that.
Right.
And so your small rural districts, such as my district, then here we are. Then we're trying to figure out, then what else do we do in order to compete with that at the same time? Because again, the criteria for our district, be it large or small, has not changed. We don't get an out because we only have 2,700 students compared to 27,000 in Charleston. That's not an out for us. We still have the same parameters to meet regardless of our size.
And then you have to deal with per pupil funding of somewhere around 10 to 12,000.
So if you have to put a magnet program in place to keep your children, guess what it's going to be? It's going to be a magnet program in your district.
There. And so many other factors, like you said, that a lot of parents aren't aware of. When you think about a rural district, the added cost, because being in a rural district, like you have people that may live 15 to 20 miles away from the school in either direction. Think about the added transportation costs for paying a bus to take 3 kids because they live near the beach somewhere, or other kids that live somewhere else. And then, of course, you try to obtain funding, but if you try to get like 21st century funding, then you have to have someone over that program and who's going to keep everything all T's crossed and I's dotted to be prepared for an audit. But I agree, Doc, there are a lot of challenges that parents are not aware of. But I want to ask you all, do you all support or oppose school choice? I want to know how do you feel about it? Do you support or oppose school choice? Tank, we want to hear from you too, Tank. You've been in here eavesdropping all night. From a
We ain't
parent's
talking
perspective.
about nothing that's ghetto like Tank. So he don't wanna and I'm just playing Tank.
Yeah, he's an educated guy. You're a parent.
I know.
He's lived in different states, experienced education systems in various states. As a parent and as an educator, or just as a citizen, how do you all feel about school choice and vouchers? And basically what a voucher says is if a student is in Allendale County schools, right? And based on their budget and the number of students, it comes out to 11,000. And these are just numbers I'm just making up for sake of discussion. If they get $11,000 per pupil, right? This parent is saying, well, I'm entitled to this 11,000 because this is taxpayer money. This money is generated by local revenue, state revenue, and federal dollars, right? The 016 law. One entity produces $1, state matches with $6, federal government matches a percentage. We come up with 11,000. Well, this money is due to me. I pay property taxes. I want to take my 11,000 and take my child to private school, blah, 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 and use my 11,000 for an education there. How do you all feel about that? As a parent, as a teacher, or as a citizen?
I mean, I asked for a voucher before I enrolled, before I applied for Carter to go to the magnet school. I did ask for a voucher, but that's more because, I mean, I moved from Duluth. Well, my son was going to school in Duluth. Duluth Gwinnett has one of the best educational systems in Georgia. So, he came from a really high performing school for me to move to Jacksonville, where there's a lot of low performing schools. And directly in my area of where I am, there's literally one middle school that I was basically being forced to send him to if I wanted him to be in public school versus homeschool, right? But it's not a great school. It's not. And so I'm like, okay, well, do you guys offer vouchers? No. Okay. Well, well then in that instance, I feel like choice is needed because what are really my options? Do I have to then force my son into the school where I know they're not doing great, amongst like the nation or whatever, or even amongst the state, even for other districts in the state, I'm here part of Duval County. And when you look at the school rankings, especially the schools that are directly in my area, we're at the bottom.
So, in other words, you support the school choice and voucher option.
I mean, I do. I do. Though I love public school. I was a public school student. I love public school. I love the idea. I love the diversity. You get what I'm saying? Public school offers a level of inclusion that, a lot of these magnet schools and charter schools and things like that don't in some instances. So, like, there's pros and cons to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, I support it for certain reasons, mainly one being the situation that I'm in. But then do I see how it can hinder, right? The public school system? Yes, I definitely see that.
Tisa, as an educator, Doc, how do you all feel about it?
Feel that parents have that right. I don't have any children personally, other than the children I was charged with, but I feel like parents have that right.
Doc?
I agree. I mean, they have that right. I mean, I can speak from an administrative standpoint. They do have that option. And again, I go back to you want to create it in your district if possible. If it's not possible, then you certainly understand what what will be the outcome possibly if parents choose to, move their children. But as a parent, I'm just going to be frank. Before I built my house, I researched the area just to ensure that I was in a part of the community where schools were rated,
Mm-hmm.
high within the district. And so there are parents that do the same thing. There are organizations and industry that before they'll bring their industry to an area, they are doing the same thing, researching the area and the schools. And that's the first conversation that you're having with the city council and county council, et cetera. And I don't think anything is wrong with that because we all want the best for our children. But I also think for those students and those parents who are working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, I don't think we look down on them. I think, again, we need to make certain as leaders that we take the time to ensure that what's good for some is good for all. And I think that's where we're missing the mark. That because students should not be defined by their zip code. They should not be defined by a test score. They should have the option, again, to come to a public entity and receive a quality education. But here again, that's not what we are facing in this time and era. And it's not something that just started existing. I think it's just more prominent and at the forefront now because school choice is right at our fingertips. But I think the flip side of that, even listening to other superintendents, and I'm thinking of in Orangeburg right now, who's doing quite well. However, they're competing against, again, charter schools that are building almost a collegiate program where even athletically they can't compete. And so the recruitment is happening. And so you just have to figure out what side of the track you want to be on as a leader. And those of us who don't have an option in it, then we have to figure out how to counteract the masses from leaving our district. And so there are a lot of areas where there could be many pitfalls, but we just have to figure out how to maneuver through. And so my opinion is, to your first question, is that I do believe that it's solely up to the parent and it should be the parent's choice for sure.
Yeah. And I will say, like, for me, like, before I wish I had done my due diligence to search the school. I didn't do that. I didn't before I moved to Jacksonville. But what I did have, right, were my son's grandparents are very on his dad's side. They're very involved in, his education, what happens, you know what I'm saying? And so they being from here, because they actually born and raised here in Jacksonville, his granddad and his dad, they knew more than I did about the decision I was making to move here and what that would mean. Had I done my research properly before moving here, I probably would have had to make the hard decision to tell my son, like, you can't move with me here. I would prefer that you stay in Georgia with your dad and stay in the school that you're in and continue in the school system that you're in. But how do you, it's like, but then how do you, for me, it was personal because it was like my son didn't want to not be with me. So how do I make that? You get what I'm saying? Like, how do I make that choice?
Well, I think you made it. You choose your child.
And I did. And I did 100%. I was just about, you took the words right out of my mouth. It wasn't an easy decision to be faced with, but I had to choose my child in the moment. And so that's where homeschooling for this year came from, giving me the opportunity to really take a look at what's in my surroundings, what options I have, and where it's going to be best for me to place him. I had to choose him. You know what I'm saying? Because I had already chose to, allow his dad that opportunity to have that main parent role. So it's like, now I kind of have to take that back because he's expressing to me that he wants to be where I am, and I'm moving regardless. I'm going regardless.
Yeah.
So it's like either you going, and his dad just kind of had to get on board. But that's what I love about our communication and our ability to compromise in these situations as parents, because though it wasn't something he wanted to do necessarily, he still understood what was happening and what needed to happen, and he made the compromise the same way I made the compromise, a couple of years back.
Yeah, I think that's powerful what you said, Deborah. But, and immediately my mind went back to, that, our ancestors fought for us to have a quality education. And it's just a moral and civil right for us to have it, and there are so many things that can deter us from receiving that. So I believe the individuals who are on this podcast and who are having these conversations, we really have to be intentional when we are out and when we are in positions of leadership and or when we have the ear. We have to just make sure that we're at the table, that our voices are heard from a standpoint, not that we're angry by far, but that we are intentional and passionate enough to, again, fight for the least of those, because there are some individuals who just don't know. But we have to advocate for what's right for all children, regardless of the color of their skin, whether they're black and brown like, I am or whatever. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about any of that. It should just simply be, it is our right to have a quality education. And that should exist in every district, at every level, and in every area.
Well said.
Right.
I'm glad we got the professionals in here tonight. I'm getting a
I
lot of
agree.
great insight and some information from you all, from all perspectives as well. Deborah, I don't know what you did to Tank.
Really?
We haven't got any feedback from Tank tonight.
I don't think Tank is. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but
He's alive. It's alive.
this y'all expertise, man. I'm just listening and learning, man.
We
I
want to
do,
get your input as well because you're a parent, if nothing else,
I know I deal with immigrations. I just, man, listen.
So
That's
you
a
just
good
supporting
topic.
people
So
left and
what
right,
do
huh?
you think they're going to be impacted by? And when it comes to schools, right? That's something to think about as well. We deal with a lot of that too, with students from different countries and the language barrier, teachers having to install monitor apps and just thinking about what effect it would have on the curriculum.
And listen, so since we've been like 5 minutes ago, I just got a link. My coworker sent me a link saying that the president, Elon Musk, sent all the federal employees an email today stating that he want to know everything we did last week. If not, we face termination. What? It's on CNN.
Like do you think he's really gonna read those emails?
No.
Right.
But it's true, dog.
You could just go to a Copilot or ChatGPT and have them type something up and email back in.
Right. But that's insane to me. I don't know.
But elections, we always say elections have consequences. So that also ties back to our discussion because we have people that come in. I'm going to share a little bit about my experience after the election, right?
Mm.
I was hired to a district. We had some few people that got elected as board members in McCormick. Well, the superintendent saw some writing on the wall, so they resigned. He left, went back to North Carolina. He took his executive director of operations with him, his assistant superintendent. So then this guy got hired as superintendent. He didn't have qualifications, so they felt like, well, we bring Mr. Mitchell in. He has a strong background in curriculum and instruction. He has the interpersonal skills needed to conduct in-house PDEs and all this good stuff. So we went in together. And a board member got into an argument with the elementary principal because the principal lived in a different county and her elementary kids went to school in their home county instead of bringing them to our county. So they said to her, well, you act like your kids are too good to be at our school, then you shouldn't be the principal. That's what a board member said. Now, remember, in the state of South Carolina, there are no prerequisites to be a board member. You can be a third grade dropout and you can be a board member as long as you're elected. So, yeah. So this person
That
told
just hurt my heart.
this person said that's all over the U.S. So for the past 9 years, I've been trying to work with our state representatives to write a bill that would require either prerequisites or continuing education while you're an elected board member. So you can come in the way you came in, but while you're here, we need you to do some continuing education in 4 categories. And it could be customized based on district needs. But what I presented to the state legislator was curriculum and instruction, school law, school finance, and ed leadership. So they can understand the roles, responsibilities of principals. They can understand, finances and how things work. Also curriculum and instruction, understanding a little about the curriculum, the teaching and learning process, which I like that term better, teaching and learning versus curriculum and instruction, because curriculum and instruction puts all of the responsibility on teachers and educators. But when you think about a teaching and learning department, education consists of both teaching and learning. And for so many years, the past 20, 25 years, there's been no obligation on the children for learning. Everything is on the teacher. Kids get a 0, it's the teacher's fault. Anytime a child fails, parents and other stakeholders find a way to blame the teacher. And we can now have some benchmarks for learning to say, what did this child do to contribute to their learning? But anyway, when these people come in and they don't have the continuing education, they don't have the prerequisite requirements, they just make emotional decisions and they ask us to terminate the principal. So my response was, you can't.
And a lot of times biased decisions.
Yeah, and that's what it was. So I said, no, you can't do that. They were like, what do you mean you can't do that? If you can't do that, then we don't have confidence in you as an administrator. I said, no, that's not how this works. You're opening yourself up to a lawsuit. And what grounds do you have to get rid of the principal? And if you do have something, we have what's called a professional growth plan. So you have to say to them, hey, after this observation, this is what we saw. You did not meet these criteria. So what we're going to do is, put you on a professional growth plan. You're going to have an in-district mentor, maybe someone from out of the district as a mentor. And these are the measurables that we would like to see at this particular time. And that person can then say, okay, in order for me to accomplish XYZ, I'm going to need these resources. And it's our responsibility to provide those resources. And when I explained that to them, they didn't know what the heck I was talking about. And they said I wasn't going to be able to do it. So they demoted me, which was fine because I'm under contract. And again, they don't understand school law. They don't understand school finances. So you can demote me, but my pay has to stay the same because I'm under contract. And they didn't know that. And my HR director didn't know that because she had just assumed the position after the last group fled. So when she spoke to the attorney, and they found out that, yeah, you do have to pay him his salary, regardless of the position. That's what the contract states. So then they promoted me back and added 4 additional titles. So I was the executive director of operations. I was the assistant superintendent. I was the STEM director. I was the curriculum director, and I was a technology director and over special programs, which is cool because, I go to work every day. You can't outwork me. But when they went out for Christmas, the superintendent, against my advice, still demoted the principal and hired a teacher and made her principal mid-year in December. And of course, I ended up suing the district and winning. It was such an easy case. I represented myself. So you can look up Coshon Mitchell versus McCormick County School District. The principal, Miss Willis, Toy Willis, she sued the district as well and won, and also kept her job in the district and her pay. So things like this happens all the time at taxpayers' expenses. And when an employee sues the district, they're obligated to pay. And not only do they have to pay the salary, you're going to have to pay the salary times a third because you've messed up that person's retirement contributions, health benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, like everything has to be paid. And taxpayers know nothing about it. So that is why it's so important to be conscious of your local elections and who you vote for, who's elected in these positions. And it happens all over. We have people in positions and then you ask them something and they have no clue. They're just popular people. But Tank, as a parent, it is so important to know who's assuming these positions. And Tisa, I want to ask you all something, but I mean, you're not at liberty or obligated to talk about it. But I saw recently where like 54 administrators, I think, throughout the district in Charleston are trying to do away with constituent school boards. Why is that?
I have no idea.
I saw they actually posted. Okay, they posted the
What is that
signatures online.
constituent school board?
So you have a consolidated, like a large district like Charleston. They have maybe 20 high schools. So in the past, we used to be broken down into smaller, like it was Charleston District 10, Charleston District 23, and we were District 23.
Okay.
We had 1 high school, a middle, 4 elementary schools, right? And there may be another district that's broken down like that. But now it's all consolidated. But we have a constituent school board that handles like student transfer, expulsion hearings, things like that. From my understanding, I don't know the specifics, but the administrators want to do away with that also. So I wanted to know why. Like, do they think the consolidated board will have the capacity to handle all of those issues at the district level, from all over the county? But I don't know the specifics or details. What was that?
I said I heard that as well, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Man, it's amazing. When you're talking about something interesting, we went through 2 hours just that quick. So we're down to 2 minutes remaining. So any final thoughts, comments, questions? And welcome, Doc, welcome, Miss Shanta. And Shanta is another educator. And she could have.
Well, I would just say it was a great show today. I appreciate all of the knowledge that you ladies came and added or
they did
presented
a lot
today.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very
and
much.
Ms. Shanta, if you're available, because I know she works at a magnet school herself, she could provide some insight for us or a different perspective for us. having that experience. But again, maybe on the next episode, we can kind of continue this conversation. And Doc, thank you for your perspective and insight, being a district level leader here, our in-house professional.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thanks for the invite, Mr. Mitchell, as well. And it was a pleasure. And thanks to everyone who tuned in.
Great conversation. Awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. Tank, final word
Yeah,
for it?
it was good. Very informative. I had some other people listening as well, and yeah, it was good, informative information y'all gave.
And we want parents to be informed and to know what is going on. And as we close out, I also want to express I do support school choice and vouchers. I had a different view until I worked at a charter school. And charters are public schools. It's just like anything else. The beauty of a charter is it gives you the liberty to deviate from a state mandated curriculum. If you present what you want to teach, you think about in the South how different areas are, how different regions are. You want to accommodate what's going on around you. So if I had a charter school in Charleston, I would want to have a supply chain management curriculum because you have Boeing,
100%.
Cummins, Mercedes, Volvo. Let's sit these guys down to a table. Let's customize a curriculum with supply chain management. Our kids can graduate and contribute. And even if you don't have a student there, I think taxpayers should have a say in what goes on because over 60% of their property taxes go towards education. So these rich folks living in these mansions downtown paying $20,000 in property taxes, $12,000 goes to these schools. So they're paying for at least one pupil's education. But again, thank you. And it's going to cut out on us in 3 seconds. I'm going to contact you all when we go live.